I've opened doors for women I had no business opening. And I've stood outside doors I was sure I had earned my way through, only to find out I hadn't. This episode is two stories. One about a door I thought was open, and one about a decision I made with my body before I knew who I'd meet on the other side of it. This isn't therapy. It's a reckoning. For the men who've been lied to about love, and the women who sold safety instead of truth. We say the things you're not supposed to say out loud. I'm Author. This is Cuff. Every week, we go deeper. Episode 38, Two Musings. The first is about a door, not a real one. The kind that opens when someone lets you closer, and how easy it is to mistake one open door for the whole house. I learned that the hard way more than once. The second is about a decision I made years ago about my own body that I never once regretted until I fell for someone who had made me reconsider my permanent actually means. Different stories, same thing underneath them. What we think we're owed and what we're actually given. Two musings, 20 minutes. Let's get into it. First musing, she said no for 5 months. Musing number 127. Go down in the show notes, click it, read it. This was a story that I wanted to write about much sooner. It wasn't, originally it was going to be much closer to Musing 13, which was one of the first long-form pieces that went up on cuffedmedia.com. What was interesting about that piece and about Musing 127 and 128 is they all start off looking like they're going to be about vasectomies, raw sex, or fluid binding, or natural sex, whatever you want to call it. But that's not ultimately what they're really about. I always say that I love to engineer these gateways where curiosity and a bias gets people in the door and they start reading, and they quickly realize that they're reading something completely different than what they thought they were originally reading. And that's very true with Musing 127. The story that is the foundation for this piece is a relationship I had with a beautiful, vibrant woman who was originally born in Ukraine. And when our relationship first started, I had told her my preference for natural sex, raw sex, or as I refer to, or we refer to it as cuffed, as fluid bonding. It was a no. And I didn't push. I, however, came into this situation like I have every time since, with I'm tested, I'll pay to get you tested, I've had a vasectomy. Let's just call it what it is. It's my thing. And it was no. What was interesting is very early on, she was much more intimate on an emotional trust and vulnerability level or aspect, or however you want to refer to it. But when it came to not wearing a condom during sex, it was a no. And we've explored it a couple times, maybe 3 or 4 times before we got to a point where it then became a yes. That was an important day. And it wasn't an important day because I ultimately was able to get my thing. It was important to me because it made me help realize or learn about the different stages or the different doors of intimacy. And I think as men, we assume a lot about intimacy and we never look at it as something that's made up of parts. We think, or I think, and I think a lot of men think, when you receive access to your body, that's kind of intimacy as a whole. I think the mistake that we think, or we make as men, is that we think that by a woman allowing you into her body, that it's over, that it's intimacy, it's arrived, we're here, that's it. We've arrived. And that's just simply not true. Because in this instance, she was intimate, emotionally, trust-wise, vulnerability-wise, but the body came last, or physical intimacy came last. Now, let's flip this and look at other relationships I've had where physical intimacy came much sooner than the emotional intimacy, vulnerability, trust, etc. What was great about me experiencing this wide range of how women treated intimacy, it really opened my eyes up to the fact that everyone does treat intimacy differently. Some people are more comfortable letting people in with emotions, or maybe it's physically, or maybe it's safety or vulnerability or whatever it is. But everyone's different. And that's true for men as well as women. I guarantee if you're a man and you're listening to this right now, if you are really, really honest with yourself, there are probably certain parts of yourself that you allow intimacy to form much sooner than other parts. Like, for example, I'll use myself. For me, vulnerability comes last. And I have a feeling a lot of men may put vulnerability at the bottom of their intimacy totem pole. And it's not hard to see why when you actually think about it. For men, oftentimes vulnerability has been inconvenient, or other men have viewed it as weakness and they use it as an attack vector. When I say inconvenience, you might be a man or know a man who grew up in a family where the mantra was, men don't cry, we suck it up, we don't show emotion. That's inconvenient emotions. That's weaponizing vulnerability. And a lot of men have experienced that, sadly. And that's something here at Cuff that we work to talk about and put it in the sunlight, because that's where it needs to be. We need to discuss it, because men are going to get better until we actually talk about these things and point out the fact that that wasn't okay. That wasn't a way to treat a young boy who's developing. And ultimately, that turns into a very damaged man. So there's a lot going on with this musing. I, again, go down to the show notes, click through, go to the website and read it, and maybe revisit this and think about it again, because there's a lot of layers. And these two pieces purposely came out this week because the architecture of intimacy starting Sunday, and I wanted to get down to the raw, gritty levels of intimacy. And I think this was a great way to start it off. Musing 128 is, I got a vasectomy, if I could speak. I got a vasectomy. Then I fell in love with someone who wants kids. This is, when I think about how this all played out, I still can't believe how my life turned and where I ended up on this topic. So let me tell you a real quick little funny story about when I got my vasectomy. So obviously at the time, or maybe not obviously at the time, I was still married. We had 3 children and we were done. And I thought, okay, we're done, so I'm going to go do this. It was my 40th birthday when I had this done. Happy birthday to me. And I drove myself there because they told me it was an outpatient procedure. Didn't think about it much. Like, hey, I'm going to show up, get this thing done, I'm going to drive home. They wouldn't let me drive home after. My mother had to come pick me up and drive me home. And this was my mother in a nutshell. I'll never forget this ever, is that we get in the car and she's just sitting there and she goes, hey, I was there when they first cut it. I might as well be here for this. So that was my vasectomy. And I haven't been quiet about it. I think if you've read my work for a while, I'm very vocal about men sharing the load in terms of birth control, personal hygiene and grooming. That if you want a woman to show up and your preference is shaved or waxed or landing strip or whatever it is, you can't show up as Jungle Larry, okay? Take care of yourself, put some effort in, show that because it's important to you, you also it's also important to you in terms of personally grooming yourself. That's just one example, but there's numerous ones, right? And so I always wanted to go into a relationship with, this is what's important to me and this is what I'm bringing to the table. And I will tell you guys, it has made these conversations so much easier to have. Because when you show up and you're shouldering some of the burden, it's no longer a preference. It's a principle. You believe in reciprocity. So you show up and you say, hey, I do this, this, and this. And the reason I do it is because this is important to me. That is an entirely different conversation when you're showing up with nothing and you're demanding a preference. Hey, I don't groom myself at all. And again, I'm showing up as Jungle Larry, but I want you to be waxed. How is that fair? Fairness is a concept that we all understand, even as a child, when things aren't fair. How did we grow into adults? How did we grow into men and not see that that's not fair? If you want to keep it unfair, stay your way. And here's what I could promise you. You're going to fight and you're going to bitch and you're going to moan about your preferences. If you even remotely listen to a tiny bit of what I've just laid out in terms of reciprocating, shouldering some of the burden, you're not going to have a lot of these conversations. There's not going to be a fight. There's not going to be an argument. You're not going to have to beg because you've eliminated the unfairness. You have shown that I show up, I do what I say, it's my preference, it's not a preference to me, I do all of this, and it's a principle. I reciprocate. Very simple. But in this instance, I had never expected, in terms of the vasectomy, of beating someone where I would consider, or I'd have to reconsider that decision. And the reason outside of why I wrote this, outside of the fact that it's a great piece to lead into the architecture of intimacy about, is I've been struggling with this. And I've even talked to a couple of you probably listening right now about concerns I had about reuniting with Tabitha and thinking about how I don't know if another family is something I would want to take on. And I'm glad I did, because the more and more I thought about this, the more I came to the realization that if I love this person like I do or like I say I do, how could I not allow, or how could I not fulfill her dream and her deep desire to have her own children and be a mother? Because if I truly love someone, I should never be the person to keep her from that. And let's be realistic, I don't know how I would live with myself knowing that it was my decision that kept her from fulfilling her dream of being a mother. But more importantly, why should she have to pay for a decision that I made about my body years before I had ever met her? That's unfair. Again, here we are talking about what's fair, what's not fair. How is that fair? Oh, you love me and you made the decision X amount of years ago, and now I have to pay for that, but I didn't even know you. Does that seem fair to anyone? And when I wrapped all that up and really thought about it, I quickly came to the decision that there's no way I could go back to her and keep children from her. Couldn't do it. And honestly, I don't want to live the rest of my life being the guy that kept children from her. But more importantly, how long would that relationship last? Let's be honest, there's going to be resentment, disappointment, sadness, name every emotion. And it's all going to be focused squarely on you and your decision. Not only is that not fair, that contradicts love on every level, at least to me. I hope you enjoyed these two musings. I think they're tremendously important as we go into the architecture of intimacy, starting on Sunday with the first Red Room Directive. Make sure you're subscribed for 8 Paid so you don't miss one. Have a great weekend. Hold the standard. Stay close.